Hey there, you're listening to Not Another TV Podcast, the week of September 13th, 2024. My name is Drew Koenig. With me, as always, my co-host, Matt Sassy. Happy Friday the 13th.
Yeah, happy Friday the 13th. Do you think of it as a bad omen or a good omen?
I think of it as a nothing omen. I think of it as a day of the week.
I don't know. I'm not terrified of Friday the 13th.
No. I mean, most of the time, only good things have happened to me on Friday the 13th. So, like,
Facts.
I remember one Friday the 13th when I was a kid. We were at Dairy Queen, and the workers just gave us like 5 blizzards for free because someone didn't come in to get them.
Yes.
And we're like, that works. Maybe stay isn't cursed after all. I mean, if it weren't for the fact that like some of the tattoo artists near me that I follow on Instagram posted that like they were doing flash sales for Friday the 13th, I would not know. It would not have occurred to me.
I only realized it because my sister's birthday is today, and I like went to call her, and I was like, "Oh, it's Friday, and her birthday's on the 13th. Oh, cool!" Like,
Right. So I know this isn't a film podcast, but I did see a thing the other day where Cincinnati, where I live, is on a short list. It's on like a finalist short list for the new location for Sundance.
oh, nice.
And I'm just like, if that happens, I swear to God, I'll laugh for a million years. Because it's gonna be a nightmare. I just can't imagine it.
Yeah, I guess from a resident standpoint, it's a nightmare, but like, I think that's kind of cool.
It is cool, and it'll like add a lot to Cincinnati, but also like, where are you gonna do it? How's it gonna happen? What's it gonna look like when potentially hundreds of film nerds descend upon the city? Yeah, I need more information on that like immediately. My old neighborhood, there was an indie movie theater. Any of you are on Twitter, you may have actually seen it a few months ago with its funny marquee sign after it went viral. And I just like, if it's there, a nightmare, a true legitimate nightmare. And there's a part of me that's like, it would make sense if it was there, but like, again, hundreds of film nerds swooping down onto like this cramped off-campus neighborhood just fills me with dread, even though I don't live anywhere near there anymore. But I'm just like, how's I know people who live in like other cities already deal with this. Like people who live in like San Diego deal with this existential dread every year. I mean, it would be cool. I will not deny that it would be cool. And I saw a lot of people excited at the prospect of it being Cincinnati because, in comparison to a lot of other options for Sundance, it's not as hellish or cold. Probably more traversable, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting from this week. Again, we're not a film podcast. We'll never discuss anything that ever comes out of Sundance. But
interesting little factoid.
Interesting factoid. Honestly, I can do with what news happened this week, Mads?
So this week it was announced that due to all of the horrible, not so great things happening with respect to Neil Gaiman, season 3 of Good Omens has been paused. The production has been paused. We're not sure if it's going to continue, but that's currently where that stands. And I honestly, the fan in me is like, no, I really want season 3, but the human in me is like, absolutely, because there's not really a way to separate him from that project.
At least not where it is right now. I think you can separate Neil Gaiman from Good Omens, just not at this current time.
Yeah, it's so upsetting to me because he was again, what is it with the authors that I like grew up loving and like made me really fall in love with reading, turning into total disgusting people? First J.K. Rowling and now Neil Gaiman. Like, is nothing sacred anymore.
I mean, this wasn't strictly TV. This perhaps TV in a extremely loose sense. But James Earl Jones passed this week.
Oh yeah, he did. He had guest spots on television, so it counts.
It counts, yeah, yeah. Another passing from this year that is just a tremendous loss. Also, James Earl Jones was not precisely a young man, so it's not.
No, he was
It's not.
93.
Yeah, it's not surprising, but
He seems like one of those people that would live forever.
yeah, yes, yeah, exactly what I was gonna say. Like, he seemed like he still had more left in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
He still had like more stuff that he could do. Whether he would or
Yeah.
even be interested in doing anything more is another question. But like, it does seem like, I mean, you're not robbed of anything because, as you said, he's 93 years old. But like, we could have had more. Not to reduce
Yeah.
James Earl Jones to like the stuff he puts out, but like, there's still some promise left there. But I did see someone on Twitter. Yeah, I did see someone on Twitter say, so now we just need to fully bury Darth Vader. Like, that's it. No more.
Yeah.
We can't let this happen. Can't let any kind of tomfoolery with that happen. So just, we're done. That's over.
Yep.
That was his.
Someone else was saying they're like, like, yes, he's allowed them to use his voice for projects without like him actually coming into the studio, but like, nip that in the bud now. We're not doing that no more. Like, not at all.
And then the last piece of news that I want to mention here is that George R. R. Martin is seeming to do anything that is not writing Dreams of Winter. Firstly, with a blog post about everything that was wrong with House of the Dragon Season 2, which I guess he can do if he really wants. I didn't read it, but that's my understanding of the blog post. And the other one, and perhaps the most unexpected, is Martin championing for another season of My Lady Jane. Which, like, you know what? If you're not going to really write, go ahead. Do your thing.
Right. Well, speaking of authors that are championing for shows to come back or like get another season, Stephen King has been going hard for Evil to get another season.
Yes.
Which is like, okay, sir, yes, we will let you join the party. Please do.
Absolutely. I mean, it's obviously, Evil is obviously Stephen King catnip.
Oh, absolutely. He's even said that like it's one of the best horror things that he's ever seen, and it's like, sir, you would know.
You would know. You've literally crafted the genre over the last 50 years.
It'll be interesting if something comes from either of these authors pushing for more seasons of these two shows.
Yeah. I mean, if you have the power, use it, I guess, I mean, if I here's the thing. If I was a celebrity, I'm not and I never will be. I want to say that. I'm not and I never will be. No part of me desires this. If I were and I had favorite TV shows that got canceled, I would not shut up about it for the next billion years. Right? Every interview I did would be,
right.
Hey, they canceled this show that I liked and they should go to hell.
But also, I don't like to say any much things about J.R.R. Martin just because, or whatever. I just don't particularly care about Martin, but him wanting more My Lady Jane is absolutely correct. We need more My Lady Jane.
Absolutely correct. And look, if he's going to do anything other than actually write his books, let him campaign for another season. Speaking of your almost slip there, this wasn't necessarily.
I know. I was like,
yeah, this wasn't necessarily reported, but heavily rumored this week, to the point of credibility, that HBO is having so much trouble. Well, not HBO, but Warner Brothers, I should say, is having so much trouble casting the young leads for the upcoming Harry Potter series, because young actors do not want to be associated with J.K. Rowling. That they are being forced to go into open auditions, which is so damning on so many levels.
Well, it's funny because that's actually how they cast the original films. Like, they did a lot of
Right.
open casting calls. But it's funny now that they're having to do it because people don't want to be associated with this person. Oh my god, that's so funny. I wish her nothing but distress. She did. I don't follow her on Twitter because for obvious reasons, but apparently she recently tweeted asking for tips on how, like, she said something about wanting to be able to stay awake all the time so she could get all the writing done, and people suggested that she start meth. And she was like, thanks for your suggestions, but I won't be doing meth.
Honestly, it could only be an improvement at this point.
That's my thoughts. I'm like, but would it be a bad thing? I don't encourage drug use, but
But there was a legitimately reported piece about the Harry Potter show, which is that they're looking to hire or looking to cast diverse actors for the series, which is going to be such a tremendous disaster. Not because Hermione shouldn't be black or something, but because we have seen the ways that the internet does not respond rationally to that, and Warner Brothers will not protect those
right.
kids. They just won't.
No.
And it's going to be a nightmare. So I hate to say this, but almost like it's almost to the point of just cast white kids for this. Like you can't ask a young black
You
girl to be.
also, like, I always laughed hysterically when they were casting the Broadway show and then they cast, a black girl as Hermione. And I laughed hysterically when J.K. Rowling was like, well, she was always like ambiguously. I'm like, no, she wasn't. You wrote her as distinctly white with bushy brown hair. Like, you literally talked about her skin color. Like, don't even.
Yeah, I always think about there was a piece that Princess Weeks did at the Mary Sue talking about this, where it was something to the effect of like Hermione Granger makes the most sense as not being a black girl because
Right.
being called a mudblood would just be another line of another disrespect that she's had to endure, and not the worst thing that's ever happened to her in her life. You know?
Right. She wouldn't be devastated by it. She'd be like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, it's just like it would just be another thing. It would be upsetting, but it would just be another form of racism that she's had to endure, and not the classically white response of finally being slurred. And that's the thing I always think about with that.
I'm all for diversity. I really am. But when it comes to something like Harry Potter, keep her racist tones in there because it will just encourage people to hate her more. And it's what she deserves.
I mean, Amazon is having to fight for its life right now to protect their Rings of Power actors. That is all the news we have for this week. Let's move on into the GOAT. So the GOAT is a weekly segment we do here on the podcast where myself and Mads nominate a best TV character or episode of all time. We're still a little bit behind here, but our last GOAT that we did, that is run through, was the one from when Lizzie was on, our friend of the show Lizzie, where she nominated Flash from Colin from Accounts, and I nominated Pacey Witter from Dawson's Creek, and I came away with a victory on this one.
I would have vetoed that.
You would have vetoed that? You would have vetoed Pacey Witter?
I would have, because let's be real, he would have won over anything else.
I did, you know what? I did say during the episode that I am courting the like Gen X and millennial women vote, which is blatant.
Listen, I've done it a few times too. That's why we came up with the vetoes.
It's why we came up with the vetoes. You would have been fair in your veto. I'm not saying you wouldn't be fair.
Anyways, so you
Anyway.
walked away with that win.
I walked
Surprising
away
no
with that
one.
win. But this week, in honor of Wynonna Earp Vengeance coming out on Tubi, we are talking about our best TV character or episode from the Sci-Fi Network. And as I was going through like all of the sci-fi shows that have come out, the Sci-Fi Network has been doing this since has been putting out TV shows in one form or another since like the late '90s to early aughts. And it was interesting like going through all of their shows and just seeing like what was legitimately theirs and what wasn't. Merlin, a co-production, or not even a co-production, but like an acquisition, like Lost Girl, an acquisition, and Stargate SG-1. The first 5 seasons aired on Showtime, and so there was a lot of that where it's like, oh yeah, that did air on Sci-Fi Network, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that isn't technically theirs, and it wasn't really until like Stargate Atlantis and Battlestar Galactica that they had like legitimately their own show. So it was interesting, like going through that. But you had everything on the Sci-Fi Network from Battlestar Galactica and The Expanse to like Warehouse 13 and Eureka. So it's like such a wide plethora of things to choose from. And I did have the question of like what is like quintessentially sci-fi, which I did have problems with that because I was like, what if you broke down the Sci-Fi Network to like its bare components? What is it? Because it did put out like such a vast plethora within like the genre, you know. Matt, tell me your pick.
So I I was looking through the list of like known sci-fi shows, and I was like, okay, most of these I haven't seen all of the show, or I've seen episodes here and there, so I was like, I don't feel comfortable nominating these shows for anything. But then there was Warehouse 13, and Warehouse 13 was my whole personality in college. I was obsessed with that show, and I was especially obsessed with the character of Claudia Donavon. I've always had a thing for geeky, computer nerd, badass motherfucking girls. And Claudia was all that and more. She starts off trying to get into the warehouse for personal vengeance reasons. Her brother disappeared. She blames Artie, but then she ends up showing them that she has computer skills that they could utilize. And she realizes that she has a talent for recognizing artifacts. And she becomes a big part of the team over time. And she just grows and evolves to the point of, by the end of the series, when they talk about the future of Warehouse 13, she is the caretaker of Warehouse 13. But the thing that really draws me to Claudia, and I think makes her one of the coolest characters in the genre, in my opinion, is that she knows who she is and she doesn't back down from that, but she allows herself the grace to evolve and change her opinions about things based on the facts put in front of her, right? She starts off not a big fan of the guys at Warehouse 13, especially not Artie, but by the end of the series, her and Artie are very close. The actress that plays her is just phenomenal, and going from loving Claudia to getting into Supernatural and falling in love with Charlie, I was like, I have a bit of a thing for certain types of characters. Um, so yeah, my pick is Claudia Donavon from Warehouse 13.
If you gave me $1 million, I could not have told you this was the direction that you would go in. I don't disagree with it. This is not how I
You
saw.
didn't think this is where it was going?
I did not think this is where this was going.
I'm curious, where'd you see this going?
It's a great question. So when I was thinking about like the best that the Sci-Fi Network put out, like what is its crowning achievement, and I was like, there was a lot of good stuff. Stargate, I love Stargate. Warehouse 13 and Eureka, I love those shows. Killjoys and Dark Matter and The Expanse, like all things that I deeply enjoy. But ultimately, it has to come back to Battlestar Galactica. And I already nominated an episode, so this time I'm gonna go with a character, which is Gaius Baltar, played by James Callis, who is kind of TV's favorite kind of character, right? A guy who isn't necessarily on a side. He's on his side. And his side will land him on any number of other people's sides, as he does throughout the show. And he flip flops, and he's almost like a scavenger. He's just going where he'll be safe. And watching as
Mm-hmm.
like he flip flops and makes like weird machinations and sabotages and manipulates his way into places of power and influence. Also, that like he won't be thrown out of an airlock is just so compelling. James Callis is incredibly Weasley. He plays this to just a plum. Watching him make those moves and watching like because he's such like an intelligent character. He's to put this into like D&D terms. He is an intelligent character with zero wisdom. So he's just making moves. You're seeing the calculus behind his eyes, but he's just entirely soulless. And the way that Callus decides to play that throughout the series is just kind of a delight. And especially like him and all his scenes with Trisha Helfer, as like sometimes he's acting against nothing. Like it's just great. So yeah, that is my pick for this week. Gaius Baltar from Baltar Galactica.
Nice. I'm not surprised you picked Battlestar Galactica.
It's just I feel that no matter what, it will always be sci-fi's like crowning achievement.
Mm-hmm.
Like it would be so difficult to like for them to put out something that like exceeds that because it's just so of its time and of its place and perfect and also sometimes a nightmare, but a great show nonetheless.
Right.
I did flip flop between him and Starbuck on Battlestar Galactica, but ultimately it was always BSG. But yeah, so those are our picks for this week. Next week, in honor of High Potential coming out to start off the fall season, we are nominating the best cop, not a cop show. You know what I'm talking about. Your Sykes, your Bones, your Castles. So, yes, that's what we'll be doing next week. You can find the poll for this goat up on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. You'll have 2 days to vote once it goes live. Be sure to like and share it on all of your platforms. Till then, let's move on into the main part of our show. So, our first show for this week is, as will not be the case always, Dimension 20, The Unsleeping City, titled Panic at the Art Show. So a little inside baseball. We did an episode in real time last week, and we had technical issues.
We did.
So we did talk about episode 9 last week, but we're not going backwards. Only forwards, people. So let's real briefly bullet point episode 9.
The thing I remember most is Sophia finds out her husband's been dead this whole time.
Yes, which is a tremendous Emily Axford moment.
Oh my god. She got me emotional, and I don't get emotional.
Emily Axford is a wonder to behold. But yeah, there was that. There was all stuff in Nod. Pete going through Kingston's memories, which is just so powerful. Lou Wilson kills it.
And like fully takes on the Vox Phantasma, is that what it's called?
For Kingston, that was Vox Populi.
Yes.
Oh, you mean for Pete?
Sorry, I get. Yes, for Pete. Sorry, I get those like both of those like flipped around, messed around. I don't remember them very well. So.
Yeah. Because Kingston's Vox Populi, Pete is Vox Phantasma. But yeah, all that is great. And then the end of that, queuing us up for this week with Pete at the art show.
basically being assaulted by his ex.
yeah, being like emotionally manipulated by his ex. Deeply shitty. But that brings us into this week with our battle episode at the art show.
Can I just say, poor Ricky, the man's like going through it this episode. He's just like, God damn it, guys. I know what I'm talking about. Why won't you listen to me?
Well, I was gonna say, like, the thing that's so great about this battle episode, which I think is a little more contained than it has been in like a lot for the season is how it gives so many of them real stake in the battle. You know, like there's something that
Mm-hmm.
they are personally bringing into it. So like Pete with his ex and Ricky with the fire and Sophia with Isabella. So like a lot of them like have like this thing that's like kind of driving them during this battle that
Right.
like gives it like that little extra sauce from like a lot of the other battles that we've seen.
Yeah, and I found it made it that much more interesting. Not that I don't find all the battle episodes to be interesting, but like definitely felt more personal and felt more important. I felt like, with the fact that they all had deep ties to something related to what was going on, that it felt like they were really putting their all into it. They really wanted to see success, and it just made it that much more poignant and impactful.
Yeah. As a result, like I feel like it really gets to just take the ball and run. To get like a lot of really
Yeah.
good shit out of this episode. Not the least of which is Pete being forced to like take care of his ex girlfriend throughout this battle, uh, which is really funny.
But man, Sophia's showing her stuff
Fia showing her stuff, but yeah, and
against Isabel. Like,
yeah, and Isabella is such a good boss. Like just to kind of like center this battle around her as the boss, like it's really good.
so good.
Yeah, and that mini in like all its infernal glory, like it's really well done.
Like, I don't know about other people, but like for me personally, like I don't do a lot of gaming, but like, and because of that, like when I like think about a big menacing character, like I don't imagine someone like Isabella. Like Isabella would not be my first thought when I would say, "Oh, that's a boss character." Like that's but she is. Like she is formidable, and she gives Sophia a run for her money, but Sophia gives as much as she takes, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
so much fun to watch them go back and forth.
Yeah, this is like a really like defining episode for Sophia, where it's like not just in terms of like an emotional character arc, but in a she has been preparing all season to do shit, and now she is doing it. She's
Mhm.
been like pat uh,
Absolutely.
padding the character sheet and adding subclasses, and now it's like, oh, we're getting to unload.
And like Emily Axford shines. Like it isn't often that she gets to be like the central part of something like this. And when when she does, man, she doesn't hold back.
Yeah, because it is kind of the beauty of like Emily's style, where it's like she is kind of I don't want to say subdued because I don't think Emily Axford has been subdued a moment in her life, but but she's allows herself to be a little bit more background sometimes, and you can see her waiting for like those moments of like, and now I go, and every time like it's like when you wind up like a little race car, like a little tiny
Mhm.
race car, and you just go, and then you just like let it go. That's Emily Axford, I think, where it's just like,
I I was going to use a different analogy, but yes.
yeah, like there's so much like potential kinetic energy that she's just like building up, and she's just waiting for that moment.
Absolutely. I was going to say like a Mentos and Coke, but yes, like same difference.
Yeah,
It builds up and then it explodes. Like that is Emily Axford. Like she makes you lulls you into this false sense of security that like she's not going to rip your face off, and then she rips your face off.
yeah, yeah. Like where some of the other players, take Allie Beardsley, who will just be a goofball and then roll a nat 20 at the most perfect opportunity, and then not do anything else for
Yes.
like 3 episodes. Emily Axford is patient. It's not that she can't do something; she's waiting to do something.
She's calculating. Like,
Yeah.
she is a very good player because you can tell that she's thinking ahead when she's doing things, because she's like, all right, I can do this and save this for 5 minutes from now or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, she is very calculating. She's very plan heavy. She does chaotic things. Don't get us wrong. She does the most chaotic things, but
Mm-hmm.
it all has purpose too at the same time.
Like, I think everyone thinks of like Siobhan as the smart player, just because she seems like a nerd and British. But Emily also, like, if you pay attention to like her during like just role play episodes, you can see her like kind of furiously flipping through her notebook and just like
Mm-hmm.
jotting things down in the same way that Siobhan does.
Yep.
Like, they're both like
Absolutely.
like very menacing, and like I could do something, I choose not to.
And you can see in Brennan's eyes when he clocks that they didn't do something that they could have done, because you can see in his eyes that he's like, we are gonna have fun later on. Like, he just knows that between Siobhan and Emily, he's going to have a good show if he's patient.
Yep, yep. I always remember something Brennan said. He was talking to Murph on a different podcast, and he was talking about Emily, who Murph is married to, and he was like, Emily is one of the smartest, most engaging players I've ever met. She was also sent from hell to kill me. And I always remember that in like the interactions that Brennan has with Emily during games, because I think he is waiting for Emily to do something batshit crazy, and if not batshit crazy, he's waiting for her to make a move. And I think it's the moments where he doesn't make a move where I have to disagree with you. He's not waiting patiently. He is sitting in fear.
Yeah.
He's going, I know she's going to do something. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to be something, and I'm going to hate it. It's going to be great, but I'm going to hate it.
But will you, Brennan?
Let's move on to our next show, which isn't a show. It's Wynonna Earp Vengeance, with a TV special, the continuation of the sci-fi series, on this time on Tubi. Most unlikely of saviors of this property. Wynonna Earp ended back in 2021. This is his first time coming back, and I'm of a couple minds about this. I think that it is very enjoyable. It's a lot of fun to be back in this world and with these characters. And I think that people in the fandom will be very pleased with this. I also think that it is has a budget of approximately $5. Is really rough around the edges, despite how much I enjoy it. I think there is some really shaky writing in this. Ignores what I think are some pivotal points of like its own rules and mythology, just to have a little adventure here that I don't know completely works. A lot of it isn't as successful as I need it to be. The antagonist in this is formidable and intimidating. There's not enough there for me to really be invested. It feels very shoddy. It's weird. I think a big positive of this is that the ending leaves it open for more Wynonna Earp to come along at a later date, which I would not be opposed to. If this is just a proof of concept of we can continue making more of this, then I'm kind of okay with that. But I don't think this is great. Like, I think people who are really into the show will get a lot out of it. I don't think people other than that would. And I kind of stand somewhere in the middle. But again, it's very fun to be back with all of these characters and actors. Waverly and Nicole continue to have so much chemistry. Wynonna and Doc have less so, but solid chemistry. Even though I don't love where this special leaves that character at, I do look forward to seeing more Wynonna Earp at a later date. And I do hope that this is a successful endeavor for Tubi to encourage them to make more of this, and hopefully with a bigger budget, because there were some points where like it felt evident that they were working with a smaller budget than what they had at Sci-Fi, which is perhaps the most damning sentence that I've ever heard. Definitely, if you are into Wynonna Earp, go check it out. Let's move on to our next show, English Teacher, which is a new show at FX or FX on Hulu or whatever. I'm not doing this again, but
Let's just call it Hulu. Just kidding.
Hulu, FX, whatever. It's all meaningless. Words don't mean anything. Don't you all know that anymore? Okay. This as the title suggests, follows an high school English teacher as he navigates the weird landscape that is high school, and especially high school now, and teaching English as a gay man. So, Matt, what do you think of this?
He's a hot mess. Evan is a hot mess express, but I've never felt more seen by a teacher in my life. He's trying so hard to keep track of all the new trends and all the new lingo and like what is supposed to be offensive and what's not. And like he is failing miserably. But also his students are not giving him any slack. And I just I realized as I'm watching the third episode that this would be me as a teacher, because I do have a teaching degree. I just never got to the point of being in an actual classroom, students in a public school setting, like teaching them. And this would be me. I would be like, okay, I said something wrong, and then I wouldn't be able to stop thinking about it for the rest of the week, because I would keep trying to attempt to make it better, and then by some odd chance making it 10 times worse. In the most recent episode, I felt very validated by him thinking that one of the other teachers has this major crush on him, and that like he's like, oh no, I can't date this guy because I'm being investigated for making out with my boyfriend in front of students last year. And like he's like freaking out, and he then gets sidled with doing the homecoming dance with this teacher, and at the dance the teacher calls him out on the fact that he's been weird towards him, and he's like, I don't know what's going on, like we get along well, like why are you being so weird towards me this week? And he just word vomits how much he thinks this guy has a crush on him, and how he's like, we couldn't work out because I'm being investigated, we can't have a life together, we can't get married. Like he's like going balls to the wall, like full visionary relationship imagination stuff. And the final statement from this teacher is, I have a boyfriend. And it's like I felt so seen in that moment. Like sometimes I get secondhand embarrassment from things like that, but I'm like, no, but that's me, because I misread social cues all the time, and I think people have crushes on me or they're interested in me, and then I like say something and they're like, I just like you as my friend. Like, I think we're great friends. And I'm like, fucking A. Like, what? I'm enjoying it. It's one of those shows that, like, it's not a masterpiece, but it's fun.
I think if you offered me $1 million, I would not be able to tell you that my favorite character would end up being Marky, the gym teacher. But against
Yes.
all odds, he's great. Like they introduced him in the first episode. I was like, this guy is the worst. And then by the end of that episode, I'm like, no, he's cooking. He's making points. He's got things
great.
to say. Yeah. And then like the second episode of him being radicalized by a true crime podcast.
In this third episode, like him sitting down with Evan in the third episode and explaining this, there's this situation in his classroom with this one student and her friend claiming that the one student's claiming that she has asymptomatic Tourette's. And Evan is like, what is this? And like whatever. So like it's spitballing out of control to the point where like he can't say anything to this girl without the whole class being like, oh my God, you need to be more sympathetic of her condition. Like, you need to calm down. So he asks Marky to come into the class with him. He's like, sir, can you please like sit in on my class? I swear to God, these kids are like pulling a fast one. Like, he's just like, can't figure out how to handle this situation. And Marky sits in his class for 20 minutes and then does a complete lowdown of what social dynamic is happening with this whole situation, and like breakdowns the whole history between these two friends and like all this stuff. And he's like, you got all that from 20 minutes? He goes, buddy, I only needed 10. Like, I did not think that the slightly overweight gym teacher coach was going to be my person, that like my favorite person.
Yeah, this whole show's kind of delightful. I don't think this is one people should sleep on. There's just a lot of like really fun performances in this, including Enrico Colantoni playing the principal, who just gets a lot of really good borderline straight man material to work with here.
Oh my God, yes. Evan tries to get him to break him and this teacher up from having to do the homecoming thing together. And the principal looks at him, he goes, but wouldn't that be homophobic? And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're both gay, right? Like, I feel like that'd be homophobic if I split you guys up. It's just like, he says it with a straight face too, which is like, sir, how are you not laughing your ass off at this line? But like, also, this show has like quirky, weird, one-off like side characters on occasion too. Like in the third episode, there's this waiter that just happens to come across Evan and the other teacher as they're discussing the homecoming dance at a like work dinner or whatever, and he sits down at their table and he's like, oh my God, you guys are gay, I'm gay, I need gay friends, like everyone else is bitches and I feel like we get along fine. And like, he's literally just like spouting off his history to these these two guys, and then he gets up and walks away, and the two teachers look at each other and they're like, what? It's just, yeah, I'm very much reminded that this is similar in vein to Abbott Elementary. And so like, and it makes me so happy because there was a time in like the 90s and the early 2000s that there were sitcoms or comedic shows that centered on the school dynamic, and we kind of moved away from that, and I'm glad we're coming back to it because there's so much potential for chaos in a school setting.
Well, like we've done a lot of school shows, but I don't think we've done a lot of like school shows from the perspective of adults, you know?
Right.
Because like we had
Yeah, workplace comedies.
yeah, well, not even workplace comedies, but like because like we had Boston Public, and then all of the other schools that shows that focus on schools have been like teen dramas and like a lot of CW stuff and things of that ilk. But we don't get a lot of shows where it's like, here's the teachers, here's the process of trying to teach students, teach high schoolers, teach middle schoolers, what have you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, we get a lot of workplace comedies, but not very many of them set place in a school where the students themselves are like very good one-off secondary prop characters. Like the football boys in the second episode with the Powder Puff football game, hilarious. Loved them.
Let's move on to our next show, Terminator Zero, which I'm checking back in on after watching the whole first season on Netflix. The show is so gory and it goes places. Like, it really utilizes violence inherent in this franchise that it doesn't always capitalize on or make a big point of, but Terminator Zero does, and it really like goes back to basics with the T-800, which was like the original Terminator from the '80s movie, and uses that to really good in a really good fashion. There's a lot of timey-wimey stuff, and like it's especially like the last two episodes, it throws a lot. I don't know how successful it is. It's a lot of weird shit, and it really needs a second season for a lot of that to cohere together to be like, oh yes, this. But it's making a lot of moves. It's doing a lot of things that are really interesting on the paper, and I would be so interested in seeing more of this and where the story might go. I think a lot of the animation is really impressive and stylish, and again, extremely gory, which isn't something that I typically go in for, but works so incredibly well here. Timothy Oliphant is so creepy in the show, voicing the Terminator. Um, I kind of can't get over it. It's so jarring and so disorienting to hear his voice coming out of a Terminator's body. Deeply unsettling. A really great show overall. Let's move swiftly on to our next show, which is Slow Horses, which has come back for its fourth season on Apple TV Plus. The first two episodes are out. Matt, did you get a chance to watch this?
I did. I watched the first two episodes. Having seen the thing about Slow Horses is that I have seen none of season 1, none of season 2, most of season 3, and now I've watched so far all that's been released of season 4. So I'm shocked that I understood anything that was going on. But I did. I actually it's definitely setting up what's bound to be a very action-packed spy bullshit shenanigans centered season. Like, there's definitely already a lot happening, and you can see where the trajectory is potentially going to go. And I'm very intrigued because I need answers, and I want those answers like right now, but I can't. I have to wait.
I think the first episode in particular is really interesting because like a lot of the marketing for the season has been like pretty much one of the slow horses is gonna die, and you're like, oh, which one's it gonna be? Because you're like, really, there's only like three of them where it's like, yeah, that would be interesting, and the rest of them are like, I need these people to stay where they are. And so like that question hovering, certainly over like the early part of the first episode, and then like the reveal and then the double fake that that it's River, and you're like, well, that no, no, I don't like that at all. um, and then the like I said, the double fake that comes out of that, it's like it's really good. And then like just watching Jack Loudon make stupid decisions, but you're like, oh, this is very good. And he has like that determined face that only a deeply stupid man would have.
So I watch TV, and we have a 7-year-old in our house, right? And I'm like watching these episodes. She's playing in her room. She comes out just as who we think is River gets shot in the face, whatever, by his grandpa, whatever. And she's like, why did that old guy just shoot that guy? And I go, I don't know, honey. Why don't you sit and find out? And she's like, okay. And she sat and watched. Like, this child watches the most crazy things, and then she goes back to her tablet and watches, Peppa Pig or something. And it's like, okay, that just happened. Yeah, I was very interested with what was going on. And in my head, I'm like, do I need to know everything that happened in the previous seasons? Apparently not really. Like, I can still manage to follow the story, and I found that I still remember the players pretty well from the research I did while I was watching season 3. So I was like, patting myself on the back. I was like, good job. You remember who these people are.
Yeah. Well, like, I think the first two seasons are pretty well contained. And I think all the seasons are pretty well contained in general. But, like, they're a little, like, mainly the big holdovers from, like, season to season is, like, everything that Diana Taverner is doing, where it's, like, she is in a different situation or, like, in a different place in her life, like, every season. And so, like, she's really the only, like, change from season to season that like really gets she's the only one that can be like really affected by the previous season's actions, who by the way Kristen Scott Thomas is just a vision to behold, which is a true fact in every season,
Phenomenal.
but especially like in the second season when she is talking to James Callis's character, who again is playing like a little weasel of a man, who I can't figure out if he actually has something up his sleeve or if he is just a wildly inept man. Um, but she's talking to him and she's just giving him the most sassy, snarky comments. She is just amazing. I love her so much.
Yeah, the more I watch of this show, the more I realize I actually really like this, and I have intentions of going back to seasons 1 and 2, but we'll see if that happens.
As always, Gary Oldman is just giving a hell of a performance. Just consistently the
Yes.
grossest old man you've ever met in your life. But like
Oh my god, when he shows up at what's her face's house and he just like starts like he stands in her kitchen, he's like talking to her and trying to get information from her, and he's doing the most disgusting things, and she's just like, what? She's like looking at him like, what the fuck are you doing?
he's so gross. But like every line out of his mouth is just like brilliant. Like it's just like it's kind of Shakespeare every time he talks.
Oh, like, yeah, this man is brilliant. Like, you can tell the character's brilliant. He's just a fucking fall down mess.
It's just a mess. Yeah, he is a character like that. You get the impression that like if he wasn't a mess and he wanted to leave Slough House, he could be doing anything. He just chooses to be here. He's just choosing to have like the cushiest job, which is in this show not that cushy. And especially like in the first episode where you're like, oh, he really thinks that River's dead and he's having like an actual human response to this. And it's like, no, he's just like I do.
Mm-hmm.
There's that one moment where after he leaves the crime scene, he gets in his car and he just sits there for a minute, and you're like, oh, he's actually gonna have an emotion, and then he reaches over and takes a chocolate, and you're like, yep, that's more like.
Yep.
But yeah, this is great, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of Hugo Weaving as the bad guy in this, who we see a little bit of in the second episode. Hugo Weaving as a spy antagonist is just chef's kiss. Like it's such a good idea. I do love the show. Just like the journey of watching River Cartwright, TV's dumbest man, just like stumble into these scenarios that he shouldn't be in. Credit to Jack Lowden who plays that so endearing. But yeah, just he has nothing going on in his brain.
No thoughts.
Let's move on to Bob's Burgers, which is back apparently for its 14th season. Last year was its 14th season. Again, it's its 14th season. Okay, sure.
We're just continuing. It's
just
fine.
continuing, whatever. Numbers and words mean nothing. With episode 14, The Big Stieblitzki, which is kind of a spiritual sequel to last year's Rudy episode, which ruined our lives.
Which listen, Rudy is my favorite. I adore that little guy. And this episode was so fun to watch because we get to see him do all he can to help his dad, only to find out that his dad is going out of his way to make sure that his ex-wife's new man feels welcomed. And it's like, poor Rudy, he's just like, I'm trying to figure out what we're supposed to be doing here, Dad. And his dad is just like, well, it's complicated.
Yeah, it's such a mature episode. Not in terms of themes or content, but just like the level of maturity displayed here, and like the nuance of what you're talking about. Like it's just so impressive for a show like Bob's Burgers. Admittedly, does not shy away from this kind of writing, and again we get Louise having big emotional realizations and just being the most well realized character on the show. Oh, I love her so much. Like she's so smart.
Yeah, truly, truly smart.
And I do love like the carryover from last year's Rudy episode into this one of like Louise is legitimately in Rudy's corner.
Yeah, I love their friendship.
Yeah, she is ride or die for that weird little boy, and like she is just full heartedly his friend. She's she's a very savvy character.
She wants him to be happy and find success with whatever he comes up with. And so like she'll go out of her way to do something even if she doesn't necessarily agree with what's happening. She's like, I will support you. I will say one of the funniest little moments in this episode was when they were trying to find a way to help Rudy's dad cheat so that he could beat the new guy, and I can't think of the new boyfriend's name, doesn't matter. And then they're like get caught by the person who works at the bowling alley, and they're like explaining what they're trying to do, and they're like, yeah, you're right, we'll just not do it. And this worker's like, no, I'm in. And you can tell she hates her goddamn job. She You can tell she hates her job, she hates her life. She's like, these stupid kids are ruining the work day. But you know what? Fuck them. I don't get paid enough for this. I'm gonna help these kids.
Unlimited slushies just seems like the worst thing in the world. That just no way that ends well for anyone.
No.
What a nightmare scenario.
Oh, come on, Drew. You know you'd want to. It'd be fun.
I do love that all of the kids gets like something to do in this episode, except for Eugene, who just kind of hangs out with slushies. But like having Tina go off and like try to hook up Rudy's dad with the girl from his cooking class.
Yes.
Because Tina is not doing subterfuge. She's just not that character. Having an awkward interaction with a stranger, yeah, that's Tina.
Absolutely. She's like, I have been waiting my whole life for this. Let me go. It works out good in the end too. Like, it's so cute.
I love the high five that Rudy and his give each other. I don't know if it's like literal, but like just the oh, I didn't think that would happen.
Right.
So I'm so glad to have the show back.
It's growing on me.
Here's the crazy thing. I'm still waiting for Bob's Burgers to have like that plateauing that like The Simpsons had, but it never really gets there. Like we're in season 14. There should be a noticeable drop, and there like sometimes there are, but like overall, like we're still like maintaining like this big quality that Bob's Burgers has. Let's move on to our next show, Lord of the Rings: Rings of Power, season 2, episode 5, Halls of Stone. So I did not get a chance to catch up with this one. So Mads, tell me about Halls of Stone.
I watched 4 and 5 together, so it kind of all just like runs together a bit. But basically, we've reached the point where, you know, that whole imagery we got towards the beginning of the series overall, where it felt like Middle Earth had some places with darkness that were fighting and having strife and discord, and then there were other areas that were not. Now you look at the board and everyone is in chaos. um you know, they're either fighting with each other, or they're fighting off some kind of evil, or they're being taken over by Sauron and his obnoxious ass. But you know, it's very interesting to see, like, as someone that grew up with the original Lord of the Rings trilogy films, and like we, you know, where there's that moment in the first one where they visit Khazad-dûl and we see the ruins of what it used to be, and now we're seeing in real time on this show the start of that downfall. You know, where Disa tells Dorian, do not continue digging. This is a dumb idea. There is something down there. I have sensed it. And he says, nah, woman, you're wrong. And it's like, we as viewers know she's not wrong. And we're watching in real time that as he starts digging to his demise. But then we also, I can't remember if it was I think it was episode 4. We get to see Tom Bombadil, who is played by the phenomenal
Rory Kinnear.
Yeah, Rory Kinnear. who I know first became like aware of who he is and then realized I'd seen him in a million bajillion things. But I knew him. He was in the first season of Our Flag Means Death playing the twin brother British army dudes.
Yes.
And he's just such a good physical actor, and Tom Bombadil is such a physical character that I'm so glad they got him to play this role. Even if it's a very limited screen time kind of role, it still has an an impact on the story. And then I don't know what is going on in the human realm of, I forget what it's called, but like the whole bird blessing the coronation of the guy that makes me think he's going to murder everybody. He literally looks like a cheesy 1960s movie villain to me. I can't keep track of 90% of the names in this show because there's just so many. But that whole side quest, they keep trying to bring it back into the story plot, and it's like, but I don't know what the point of it is. Like, it feels disconnected. There doesn't seem to, it doesn't feel like there's motivation to connect it to what's going on with the elves and what's going on with the dwarves and what's going on with the Harfoots and the stranger, right? Like, it just feels disconnected. And this is the point, I think, in the show where we're really kind of starting to see the disjointedness of trying to have so many plot lines going on at the same time. Which is a Tolkien problem. It's a major Tolkien problem. I'm sure eventually it will come together and we'll be like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. But in the thick of it, it's very annoying. It's frustrating. So, yeah, we'll see where this goes.
Yeah.
But I will say there's been a lot of great cameo works in this show. And I'm here for it.
So to your point about the, I think there are two big reasons, probably three big reasons. The first is like you have to do like the Fall of Numenor, which is like big Lord of the Rings mythology shit, and then like if you have a season where you have rings being passed out to the elves and rings being passed out to the dwarves, you also need to do like the Nazgul shit too, of rings being passed out to men.
Yep.
I don't know who those.
Well, they do talk about it in the 5th episode, because Sauron, pretending to be what's his name, tries to get the elf guy. I can't remember his name. And elf names are like really weird. But the elf guy that's making the rings, he tries to get him to make them for men, and he's like, men are too weak. I'm not making rings for men. And so like you see the start of that conversation. It'll be interesting to see how we get to the point where he actually gets the rings to the men, the right. Kings, So
well, even just with like within the confines of the show, I don't know who the 9 rings are going to go to for the men.
Mm-hmm.
Like to make the Nazgul. So it's like that's an interesting wrinkle of like I don't know who I'd pick to do that, because we know that like Elendil and Isildur still have to like do Battle of Mordor shit, and like that's another point of this of like
right.
You need those characters to be at the point of like that.
Yeah, there aren't that many human characters that have been introduced that are significant that we can't also know, or that we don't also know need to be still human in that big final battle, right? So the few that we've been introduced to, well, Isildur's out because he has to take up the ring, and then be betrayed by the One Ring. So like, who the fuck is gonna do this? It'll be interesting. I hope it's the crazy 60s movie villain guy, because good riddance, go away. I truly can't think of his name. And I truly feel like it doesn't matter, because again, that human sanctioned village, whatever, kingdom doesn't come into the story often enough for me to know or care.
No, and I also don't think the 9 rings are gonna play in too strong this season. Because like I think it's
No.
gonna be Fall of Numenor. Then hey, I got some rings for you.
Yeah, I truly think this season is going to focus on what that what the three rings to the elves is doing to the relationships between the elves themselves, because Elrond and Galadriel are at odds with each other, and they're on this mission together, and she goes off to fight you know, someone they come up against, and she literally gives the ring to Elrond. And but when she comes back, having defeated this thing, he's like, "You didn't give up the ring for me." Or he's like, "You didn't fight for me." He's like, "You fought so that you could keep your ring." And it's like you can tell that he just does not care about her on the same level that he used to. And you can tell it's that influence of the ring, right? And then we're seeing the influence of the rings on the dwarves. They're starting to do things that are totally against their nature that has been built up in season one. Doreen is going against the laws that he put in place. He's breaking down those laws and saying, "Oh, that whole mining law that I had where we can't dig too deep? Fuck it. We're just gonna do it." And so, like, I think that's going to be the main focus this season. Is not that we have that many episodes left, but it's going to be on the effects the rings that are currently in circulation, so to speak, are going to have on those two groups of people.
Well, let's move on to our next show. Bad Monkey, Season 1, Episode 6. Yo, would you tell Miss Chase I still love her like crazy?
That is a long ass title.
It's a long ass title. Yeah, I continue to really dig this show. Yancey in jail is really fun. Him going up against Menendez is really entertaining. Who's just shit.
It's like we've been waiting for this moment.
He's just the worst.
One of the moments in this episode that I thoroughly enjoyed was the ex-girlfriend has like escaped to the cabin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the federal agent comes knocking, and Yancey's friend is like, "Yeah, sure, she's out back, don't worry." And then she drives off in his boat right as the federal agent and him come out the back door, and he's like, "Actually, seems to me like she just left, and I'd like to report a stolen vehicle." So good. I'm liking this federal agent lady. Like, she's fantastic.
Oh, she's so good. But like the Michelle Monaghan part of the show is so weird to me. I think Michelle Monaghan is doing great. It's also the shakiest part of the show.
Yeah, definitely.
Where it's like I don't know what she's doing. I don't know what she wants. I don't know what she's gonna do now. Like the line of like she has to stop running, but not right now. Is like I don't know what that means. I don't know what realization you're coming to.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the whole purpose of her is.
It's really weird.
And I'm not sure how I feel about her, so I kind of just forget about her.
Yeah, it's a really weird character. I think one of the standouts in this episode is the Dragon Queen interacting with Eve and Christopher.
Yes.
She is scary. She terrifies
definitely.
me. She is a vision to behold.
But I also want to be her friend.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I did love the reaction from Eve, who is a character who can repeatedly eat dirt. But I did love her going like, "What the fuck is a dragon queen?" Like that is the most normal response that I think she's had this entire show. If anyone was like, "I think you just if you heard about the dragon queen, you'd be like, what the fuck is a dragon queen?"
Exactly.
What are you talking about?
And Yancey's neighbor continues to be an asswipe, and that's why I love the federal agent, because like when she came to Yancey's place looking for him and his ex and whatever, and she finds the neighbor, and he's like talking to her, and she goes, "Oh, this is the first time I'm seeing your house in the day." He goes, "Isn't it something?" She goes, "No, I'm not impressed."
Not a compliment.
It's like, "Sir, nobody thinks your house is great. It's a big ass yellow eyesore. Like, what do you mean you think it's great?" Ro and his is is that Rose's husband or boyfriend?
That's his husband.
Okay, like, their interactions are great too. Like, just...
Oh, yeah.
There's the one scene where he's like, "This is the least sexy you've ever been."
And I like that the show is starting to converge on itself with like the Neville and Yancey plots starting to become one. That's fun. I look forward to seeing where that will go.
I'm looking forward to seeing Eve go down. That's just me personally.
Let's move on to our next show. Sunny, season 1, episode 10, titled "The Dark Manual." And this is the season finale. Who knows if we will get a second season of this? But it's fine. It leaves a lot left on the table. It doesn't answer a lot. It's mostly just character reunions and kind of dealing with the Yakuza, but not really, given where this season ends, which still leaves a lot of Yakuza left to deal with. Yeah, it's not great. It's very flat as a conclusion to the season. I feel bad about where it leaves it for Mixie, who's a character that I've often not known if I can trust or not. I think the situation might be a little more complicated than a lot of people watching this might be prepared to accept that it is, given a lot of that body language that's in the final moments of that episode. Just all I'm going to say about that. It doesn't leave me very amped for a second season. Let's move on to our last show, Women in Blue, season 1, episode 8, entitled Rosa. Matt, tell me about Rosa.
So in the previous episode, at the end, the women have discovered that there's a man that was killing people prior to the undresser crimes that weren't linked to the undresser because they were slightly different, slightly less calculated, a lot more messy, just not... It was clear that this was an inexperienced killer, but these women, because they're geniusly amazing and at what they do, and they know how to look at clues for what they are, put together that these other killings might potentially be the start of him becoming the killer that he now is. And so that leads into this episode where the women are reading the file on this young man that they discovered in their investigation in the prior episode, named Benito. And he lived in this home with this woman named Rosa, who was one of the murder victims that they found. And she was a foster mom, and she took in all these children. And so this episode dives into his story and what they find in her journals and the files that they have on his, documented foster system stuff, his family histories, things like that. And so we get to know this Benito character, and as these women are getting to know him as well, and we're discovering that he might actually be the undresser, right? The further we go into this investigation, we're like, okay, this guy might actually be the person they're looking for. We find out that he comes from a very troubled past. He was sent to Rosa's after he witnessed his mother being murdered by his father, and he is very quiet and almost catatonic. Like, he's very traumatized by the events that he witnessed. And then Rosa gets to know him better, digs a little deeper, and finds out that is actually not so sweet and innocent. That he learned things from his father, about beliefs about women and where they belonged, and all these things. And we start to see that he killed Rosa because she didn't fit his image of what a woman should be. And then it makes it very, very clear that he is the undresser, because Rosa was the first woman that he killed because she worked outside of the home. She wasn't really a homemaker. She wasn't really completely focused on kids. She, had to do child rearing and work a job, and like that just was something totally against what his father had taught him. And that's exactly the MO for all these other women that have been killed throughout this season, right? And as they're realizing this, it cuts to Benito going on a date with the girl that her father's the captain, and her brothers are all cops. And so we're left realizing that he's with her. Her life is in danger because she is exactly the kind of woman he likes to kill, right? She doesn't want to stay home. She wants to work. She wants to have a job. She wants to do all these non quote unquote women things. And so that's where it leaves it. It really is setting it up for a very exciting next 2 episodes. I continue to really like this show. I feel like the pacing is really good. It took us 8 episodes to find out who the killer is. Like, that's great, because it constantly has felt like we learned something, so we move one step forward, and then we realize that that was incorrect, so it's 2 steps back, right? But now we've finally got to the point of there's no stepping back. This man is the killer. Now we need to find him, and quickly, because Gabina, that's her name. Gabina is with him, but they don't know that Gabina is with him. And so the moment they realize that she's with him, it's going to be even more emotional and motivated.
I still have so much catching up with the show to do.
You have so much to catch up on.
Like 5 episodes. Hopefully, I'm able to do that this week. That is it for this week. Next week, we will be talking about Agatha all along with other stuff, I am sure. Until then, Mads, tell me where they can find you online.
On Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at DorothyNYC89. And over on Tumblr, I am MadsWorld15.
And you can follow me on Twitter at TheDrewKoenig and everywhere else at Drew Koenig. And you can also find me at Serialize and Letterboxd, posting what I watched throughout the week. You can find the podcast on all your social media platforms at Not Allowed TV Podcast. And you can email us at notatvpodcast@gmail.com with anything that you would like to send our way. You can also go to our Linktree at linktree.com/notatvpodcast, where you can find all our social media platforms, plus our Discord, where we are talking about TV throughout the week and doing live watches. You can find previous episodes of the podcast on Apple and YouTube, and also at our Libsyn feed, which is our full directory, at libsyn.com/notatvpodcast. Be sure to leave a review and subscribe on whatever podcasting device you use. Till next week, please remember, don't go in the ocean. Doesn't matter if there's a weird animal in there. Leave it alone. Goodbye.